on? This is Tracy Malone from narcissistabusesupport.com. If you've been going through a relationship with a narcissist and you also have a lot of physical symptoms, meaning illnesses, ailments, it goes from the range of, anxiety to depression, all the way up to cancer and back problems and, kidney problems and all kinds of autoimmune things that can happen because of the abuse. And while we go to the doctor for these things, there's such a tie. And today I've got a special guest. My friend, Meg Hayworth, is going to talk to us about the nutritional, the emotional, the wounds that come from this kind of abuse that are going to affect you. So let's go meet with her. She is a transpersonal psychologist, a holistic nutritional chef, best-selling author, and also is a survivor. She helps people become independent and confident, and her holistic Welcome, Meg. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh gosh, thank you so much for having me. I just love talking to you.
Oh, you had an amazing summit recently, and I was so glad to meet you for that. And today we're going to have a great conversation about the connection between illness and
Mhm.
narcissistic abuse and trauma. And,
Yeah.
many victims of narcissistic abuse end up sick, and trauma makes people sick. So, can we talk about how and why trauma causes people to get physically sick?
Yeah. Gosh, emotions, these negative emotions and emotional abuse is all about throwing negative emotions at you, right?
Mhm.
Particularly, narcissistic abuse is a shame-driven disorder. So they're projecting that shame on you. And shame is an intense toxic emotion. They've actually measured this on scales and hertz, so sound frequencies.
Mhm.
Shame is the densest of all emotions there are, measuring at only 20 hertz. And so you're carrying that for the narcissistic person. You grow up believing, if you're parented by one, and if you're in a relationship with one, you also will believe, I'm a bad person. I'm at fault. I'm the one who does everything wrong. So those emotions they're literally draining our system. And then there's more science behind this, in that in the science of mind body medicine, we know that emotions will, the chemicals from the emotions are felt in every single cell of the body when you feel them. So if you're spinning in shame every single day with a narcissistic mate, fear, sadness, all of the things, anger, boy, do we get angry with a narcissist around, because it's just like rage comes out, because it's like you can't believe the things they do.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that wears away at the system. And then they know from the adverse childhood experiences study, which is the largest public health study ever done, that there's a direct correlation between the things that happened before the age of 18, the different types of abuse you witnessed, whether it be like your parent beating up your other parent, your incarceration of a parent, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. They don't really measure emotional abuse, but it's so insidious. I wish they would. I think it's becoming more and more of a like, oh wow, this is bigger than we thought
Mhm.
epiphany, in the medical world. But so you're constantly, I know it's taking a long time to answer this one question, but I think it deserves some attention, because what happens is your immune system is getting suppressed,
Mhm.
and you're emitting cortisol, you're emitting adrenaline. These hormones are just spinning in you all the time, because you're constantly, what next? Because there's going to be a next. There's always a next. So you're in that hyper aware state,
Mhm.
and that destroys the immune system. So then you become vulnerable to all kinds of illnesses,
Mhm.
because your biology can't carry all of this abuse. It's a real thing. It's huge.
It's absolutely a real thing, and I have many clients. I've had clients that it caused them to have cancer.
Yeah.
I had a diagnosis when I was married that the minute that jerk left, I never got sick like that again. And
Yeah.
it was like 8 years of doctor visits and trying to figure this out, and the problem left when he did, which
Yeah.
is again that sort of tie of being in that state of constant hypervigilance
Yeah.
and fear because you're afraid of the shoe falling or the eggshells. What am I going to happen today? And you're always just, in my case and many others, you're always trying to like smooth the frosting so that you don't get in trouble. You're trying to do more, keep up with everything, make
Yeah.
sure that they don't poke the bear.
Yeah.
But in the end, nothing we do is gonna not poke the bear. So
Yeah.
we can get sick. I know you had a very dramatic story. Would you like to share yours, how this affected you and the holistic medicine from abuse to wellness?
Yeah, I grew up with a narcissistic parent. And as a child, I was sexually, physically, emotionally abused. This was like, it was so awful. I went through so much and, it was my daily reality. And I always had this very sunny sort of personality, but I had underneath the surface, I did not, my insides and my outsides did not match at all. And I just got sick. I was sick through most of my childhood. And by the time I hit my 20s, I was in and out of doctor's offices, put in bed for weeks at a time, 9 different meds. I also had additional traumas of I drowned as a child and had to be revived.
Mhm.
And so and that was part of that parent's negligence was a big reason why it happened.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh God. So anyway, it's so those all those traumas, all that abuse, by the time I'm in my 20s, I am so sick. I and I was in a pain all the time because I have scoliosis. A lot of people who grew up in these kinds of homes, we have scoliosis.
Mhm.
You think about like for me, it's right behind my heart. I think of the body as a metaphor for your experience, and mine's curved and twisted. And I would say that's how my childhood was. There were a lot of great things in my childhood. Honestly, there really were. But when you're fighting against these two completely different realities that are coming together at once, which is kind of explains narcissistic abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's intense.
It takes a toll on your body and it takes a toll on your health. I'm sure you know about the body keeps the score.
Yeah, yeah.
I am a proponent of the feelings buried alive never die, which is just like the body keeps the score. There's a big book, but this one I could look up right now and go, huh, well, I don't want to pick diarrhea. Let's just say, I mean, it says feelings of resentment, feelings of this, hiding your feelings, confusion, all of this is that cognitive dissonance that we go through.
Yeah.
Every single one of those illnesses, and everyone's in there. And you're just like, I
Mhm.
passed that book around once at a meeting I had in person once, and there was a new gentleman at the end of this table of 30 people, and it got to him, and he was like, "Can I raise my hand?" And I'm
Mhm.
like, "Sure." And it was his first visit, and he said that his entire life, he had narc parents as well. His entire life, he had back problems, like from age 5, like
Mhm.
severe, like put him in braces, try to figure out, couldn't figure it out, just lifetime of this. He had been like no contact with the family for maybe 6 months. And he goes,
Mhm.
this thing on back just explained my whole entire life. I haven't had a pain since I went no
Yeah.
contact, right? So
Yeah.
it is something that people need to know and really try to find a way to help themselves. But
Yeah.
I know when they've got narcissistic parents, like we've used it in these examples today,
Yeah.
uh, they get wounds,
Yeah.
right? So is there a difference between a wound from a family of origin or a relationship, or are we still digesting the same, stuff that makes us sick?
It's narcissistic abuse is narcissistic abuse. However, when it's your parent, it takes it to a different level
Mhm.
because it's the programming begins immediately. So those first 7 formative years, they're programming you. So and I call us adult children of narcissists, I call us acons because we've been conned into believing all of the stuff that's not true. You're a bad person, you never get it right, you're not good enough. Just those messages that just get reinforced all the time throughout your life. And it's an unwinding those, but you get those in a romantic relationship too. You get the same messages, and then they destroy the same systems. And I think a lot of people don't think about this. If you're married to a narcissist, you have kids, you're with a narcissistic parent. You're watching them abuse your children and abuse you, and the whole narcissistic family system dynamic. That person, you can shift and change that dynamic. I know the divorce process, but at any rate, it's same wounds differently, if that makes sense.
Of course. Again, it's also more ingrained in your psyche. You might be married for 20 years and be told you were never good enough. But if you are 60 years old and you've heard that since you're 5, that compounds, almost like compound interest. Like it's like you'll never break out of it. Whereas again, we know that, but it just feels like that at the time because it's so overwhelming, and it becomes sort of the recordings of your life. And I know my parents are like, "You're not the smart one. Your sisters are so much smarter than you. You'll never," and then at both of my weddings, my father said, "Well, she's your problem now." I'm like, this is really supportive, guys. Thanks. But that's what they do, right? They have to pull you down and ruin it and ruin my wedding day by saying something dumb like that. So are there primary wounds that we get from this?
Yeah, I've identified 5 primary wounds that we get from parental narcissistic abuse or narcissistic abuse in general. But the first one is self-esteem. So the wound of self, like self-worth. How do I feel about me? And that's, because they're constantly criticizing you and putting you down. I mean, you just said, your own wedding day, when it's supposed to be the happiest day of your life, but when your own parent is taking that away by another cut, it's like that one cut at a time that they do. So self-esteem is a big one. And I think one that most of us can really relate to, because we just feel beaten down, and it's hard to see yourself as like this confident, powerful, amazing person that you really are when your own parent is reflecting back to you constantly that you're a problem,
It's you, not them.
Exactly. Yeah.
What other wounds do we have?
Yeah. So we have another one is self-trust. Huge, the lies that you witness, and for the longest time you didn't even know they were lies. There's the lies you're being told about yourself, and you're being programmed to believe, but then there's the lying and the hiding and the cheating and all the stuff that they're hiding. And narcissistic parents tend to not trust their children. It's because they can't be trusted and they know they can't be trusted. So they're projecting that onto everyone around them, accusing the spouse of, cheating and keeping everybody isolated and imprisoned. I mean, I experienced it like a prison. We called it jail, my sisters and me, and that's what it felt like, because it was just a constant, it was beyond strict. I think it's okay to like be strict and take care of your kids and make sure they're safe and all of that. But it was way beyond that, where we all felt like we were imprisoned. And so at any rate, the self-trust thing, a lot of us become highly intuitive because we're so used to sensing like what's going on in the room, and we're highly empathic. And that's what they're pulling on, is that empathy as well. And so because of that intuitive and that empathic, we're using it for all negative reasons, like to tune into the negativity in the room. So we neglect our own greatness, our own inner voice that's soft and kind and loving and caring. A lot of times we can't even get to that because we're so busy ruminating. So that's a big part of self-trust that we never learn, is how to trust our own inner voice, how to trust our bodies. We get disconnected from them because many of us are dissociative because we, are just trying to get through the day, you know?
And
So
also with the self-trust, the gaslighting that you experience is sort of the core of confusion, which if you're in confusion, the self-trust, the I'm confident that this is right, because every time you say something like that, you're shot down. So every time you do it, you've learned, you've been groomed to just go, yeah, good try, Tracy, but next time, and it was always that sort of thing. But when you were talking, and I know you've got more, but I want to go back to the self-worth and self-esteem.
yeah,
Then the imposter syndrome comes, where they don't even believe that they're capable of things, right? The parents have put such a wound in their head that,
yeah,
that then you're just like, well, I know I graduated from Harvard and I should be smart, but I still don't feel like it, because of those recordings in your head from your parents.
yeah,
Yeah. All right. So what other
exactly.
ones did we have? I know there's more.
I know there's actually more, and I would say there's, subcategories of these wounds too, because like another wound would be addiction. That's another big connection to all of this, right? The wound of addiction.
Yeah.
Another one is self-identity. So, and I think this is one of the worst things that narcissistic parents really squash, because your identity is who you are in the world, and you don't get that doesn't get nurtured in you because you have to be so other focused. You have to focus on them all the time, try to make them happy, which is impossible.
Mhm.
So a lot of us become people pleasers, and we don't know who we really are. We don't know what our true gifts, talents, and abilities are. Like,
Mhm.
you might have a talent that got nurtured only because it made them look good, and then they pressured you and abused you around that talent. And so then you became resentful of the talent. I hear this a lot from people.
Mhm.
So, so your identity is something that is, I think it's one of the worst things. I mean, it's all terrible, but you don't get to be who you are.
Mhm.
Like, that's intense. I mean, I'm sure you run up against that quite a lot, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the average narcissistic victim really doesn't know who they are anymore. They don't
Yeah.
remember who they were before. And if they had that extra complication of a narcissistic parent, there's just nothing there because they were squelched, those hobbies, those passions, those things that would have made you who you are. Well,
Mhm.
you're not good enough at that. Don't waste your time. You'll never be good at that. Stop that. And so again, now you're sitting there and you've got nothing. You're like the emperor with no clothes. You're standing there naked, just going, I don't know who I am. And that's one of the things I find my clients really need to do the work to start to really remember.
Yeah.
And I know I just did a talk on who you are at a conference, and you know, we have had been so many different people in our life. My teenage Tracy is not the Tracy now, and my this Tracy and that Tracy, my mother and soccer mom Tracy, and there's all
Yeah.
these parts, but we get to end up choosing which parts we want to keep,
Yeah.
which parts we want to nurture and make a greater part of our life, the kind, loving parts of us that weren't allowed to come out before.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. It's just so important to find those because it's in there, you know?
Yeah.
And so many people say, I have no sense of identity. It's like, no, no, it's in there. We'll get to it. We'll work with that,
Yeah.
you
How do you
know?
how do you help them find it? How does like one piece of advice to have somebody, again, it's obvious each situation, but is there something that we can give them as a kibble on this video to just go,
Yeah. Yeah. I think a simple thing to do is to look back at your childhood, and what are the things you hid from your narcissistic parent?
"Mhm,
you know, like, did you go in your room and hide the artwork that so
mhm,
loved to create, but, you were told you were bad at it,
mhm,
did you, what are the things that you were good at, you were really interested in, but you felt like you couldn't share it?
Mhm.
And you can go back to those things and nurture them and you know, bring those back into your life in various ways, you know. Did
Yeah.
you love to sing? And they told you were, you sounded like nails on the chalkboard, but you were actually quite good at it, but you never were able to accept that talent because you were told you were wrong, you were bad. So, those are things you identify with,
Mhm.
and they help lead you to your identity. The who am I? Who am I really? You know.
Exactly. And you mentioned perfectionism before as a byproduct of being with a narcissist because you're always on those eggshells,
Yep.
making sure everything's fine, everything's perfect. You're trying to not poke the bear. And so I think for people, they have to look at something like perfectionism and
Mhm.
look at the roots and go, you know what? Yeah, I'm organized. Yeah, I'm this, I'm even OCD, whatever it is, like, and go, is that who I want to be? Like
Right.
I had to break that because I was the people pleaser. I was the perfectionist. I'm still working on it. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I can now at the age of 64 leave a dish in the sink overnight. Took me 64 years, but I was just like, oh no, I don't care how late it is. I'll wash every dish after the party. I was so nervous because that's how
Yeah.
I was groomed and raised.
Yeah.
And now it's so freeing to go, you know what? It's hard to do, but it's a separation of what the coping mechanism was in the family system to
Mhm.
go, yeah, I did that to protect myself, but
Yeah.
sometimes it would be nice to have my clothes on the floor next to the hamper. I never do that, right? Just to look at the things that were, again, groomed into you. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying you go and you make your house a mess. I'm saying if the clothes laid there overnight, no one's gonna die. If you left
Yeah.
a dish in the sink, no one's gonna yell at you, right? And so
Right.
taking back some of those things that were took from you, not only your passions, like you said, but almost
Mhm.
the wounds of this, and going,
Mhm.
I don't like being a perfectionist because then I'm never happy.
Yeah.
I'm always, I got a 99.9 on the test, but I should have got 100. That sort of drive that a parent will place in their head that cripples them to
Yeah.
think that I got a 92. That's terrible. Oh no, I'm
I
gonna get in trouble, right?
know. I
It's sort of
know.
living on that edge
Yeah.
of the fear of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, there's so many things it brings up in us.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Do we have any other things on your list?
Yes. The fourth one, and you can start to look to it how these are all interrelated because they are. It's a holistic abuse, basically. Your mental, emotional, physical, and energetic is all experiencing this. So the next one is self-expression.
Mm.
So, and you think about, like, I call it a prison of silence, where you just feel like you are silenced.
Mm.
You're not supposed to talk to anybody about what happens. And even if you do, who's going to believe you? At what a horrible person this is, because they're so invested in their public persona
Mhm.
and, in manipulating people. I mean, they're experts at manipulation.
Mhm.
So that wound of self-expression is intense. You have to start to learn how to speak up and know who to speak up to and who not to. And,
Mhm.
there's all this discernment that has to go on. And of course, this is wrapped up in your self-trust, your intuitive development, and your self-expression or your self-identity. All of those things are all wrapped up together.
Mhm.
And so that's why I keep saying it's holistic. It's not
Mhm.
just mental health
Yeah.
or emotional health
Mhm.
or physical health.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, when you're thinking about self-expression, how do we get that back? Well, we go back, like you were saying, and we look back and go, what did I like to do? What makes me happy? Do I like to play the guitar and I couldn't before? And
Mhm.
maybe I don't. I have friends that are just like, I don't have anything, well, then try some new stuff and see.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
free to try and find that happy place so that you can self-express.
It's never too late to do that.
Mm-mm.
Never, never too late. It may be scary as heck. It is scary. And that's okay, pushing through that and picking up the guitar or, you know,
Mhm.
wanting to be, maybe you want to be an accountant, and you're 60, but
Exactly.
they were looked down upon in your family. Like they can pick anything and
Mhm.
denigrate it.
Absolutely. But it also feeds into self-expression, feeds
Mhm.
into self-compassion.
Yeah.
So, you know what? I tried jumping from helicopters, but I didn't like it, right? You dreamt of doing that all your whole life or whatever it was. And then, oh, okay, well, that wasn't the one. Instead of going, I failed. I should have
Mhm.
jumped from the plane quicker or better, or I didn't do this. It's that self-love and self-compassion ties into this whole, 5-point thing that we're talking about, because how can you have self-trust? Because you're gonna make a mistake, but self-compassion helps you go, it's okay, Tracy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I
So,
love all these. They're all starting with self. I love it.
yes, self. Yeah, because that's where we have to come back to,
Mhm.
back home to who we really are, or home in the first place.
Yes.
Because you can't really gain something you never had because, from the time you're a little baby, you're the problem,
Yeah.
you know? So it's you gain for yourself. And that's always the key, right? Is to learn to focus on the self. And that's the thing they don't want you to do. It's the
Oh, yeah.
last thing you're supposed to do.
Yeah. They don't want you
You
getting
know?
stronger.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Self-expression. So the fifth one is the physical body. So the wounds of the physical body and how all of those things manifest in the physical, which we started this whole conversation with, the different illnesses. I wanted to say a little bit too, because cancer has come up a couple times. And the thing I see routinely with cancer patients, and I've heard so many other practitioners talk about this too, is it's associated emotionally with long held resentments
Mhm.
and fear. And so those things, when we work through letting go of the resentments and letting go of the fears and things that were instilled in us, it's not
Mhm.
even our stuff, really. We start looking at all of this. We feel so much more empowered, and our bodies can actually heal. I've seen people's bodies heal, and from different various conditions in just a couple days, sometimes overnight, because we got to the emotional root cause of what was being held in that part of the body.
Mhm.
And it's fascinating. And it makes sense that we're built that way.
No. And it's so strange to me that normal MDs do not even read a book like this or see the connection.
Yeah.
It's here's a pill, fix that, but not ever going, okay, but if we heal that, help you with that, this will all go away, right? It's such a different world. I have a homeopathic doctor and a regular MD, and I get so much more from the homeopathic doctor who's more about wellness
Yeah.
versus you're sick, okay, here's a pill. And so just to understand that it really does affect you physically.
Mhm.
And besides the PTSD or CPTSD that 90% of clients get
Yeah.
because they're in such trauma and such shock, I know that you developed something that was a somatic technique to help people
Mhm.
with this. Want to tell us about that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's called whole person integration technique. And it's an emotional release therapeutic technique that helps them to see where are they holding that emotion in their bodies,
Mhm.
and helps them to release the emotional energy, the
Mhm.
thoughts, the feelings, and the negative core beliefs associated with all of that.
Mhm.
And so it's a really powerful technique. And this is where I've been able to see people heal things overnight because they released that resentment. They released the fear. They released, the rage they were holding in that part of their body. And the body was able to do what the body's meant to do. And it is meant to heal itself.
Mhm.
You give it the right stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we work with the emotions themselves. So we work with the shame, the fear, and we look at them as, what's the experience of the emotion? So you're
Mhm.
taken outside of your own story. You're
Mhm.
realizing it's you, but you're really looking at, well, what's the anger holding? What are the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs and experiences of that? And how is that manifesting in my body? And when people see the holistic connections, they're like, I want to get that out. Well, no wonder I have ulcers, you know, or, heart disease or whatever it is. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
so I help them to release that.
That
Yeah.
sounds so helpful for people. I think that
Yeah.
everyone should get that because it's the wound. It's almost like wound therapy,
Yeah.
because you're actually hitting the wounds that were caused by this and working on each one of them to go, okay, let's work on shame today. Let's work on grief and anger and all of the different things. That's how I will run my groups.
Mhm.
And it's amazing to me how many people. I wasn't ever trained on any of this, right? I didn't
Mhm.
know how to trust someone. I just said, hi, nice to meet you. I didn't know how to do that because when you're raised by a narcissist and then marry them, you really don't ever get to build that. You don't have the self-trust, so it's hard to trust others, right? So there's such a connection between this and being healthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And
Absolutely.
there was some overlooked parts of humans that we want to discuss that they should be investigating. Tell us about that.
Oh, I think the most overlooked part is kind of what we've been talking about all along, and that's the energy system.
Oh yeah.
That our energy system, people, I wish that doctors, and I hope that one day this is the case, the
Mhm.
doctors will look at the energy first and
Mhm.
then go from there because it's the energy that determines the health or the sickness of the body, to a certain degree. And so those thoughts, those feelings, beliefs, those experiences that we go through and the way that we store those have a tremendous impact on us.
Mhm.
So, and I say, the energy system is the one thing you can't live without. It's the thing you come into this world with and you leave this world with. And
Mhm.
so let's take care of it while we're here. And we take care of that by releasing the emotional experience that has dragged us down,
Mhm.
that has created, you know, terrible relationships with others, especially our relationship with ourselves, because we become people pleasers and other oriented, and because we were trained to be that way. We're self deprecating, we're self soothing or self medicating, all the different things that we do to try to avoid the emotional experience. But I say that those emotions inside of us, those negative core emotions that we have and those beliefs associated with them, I think of them not as negative emotions anymore. I think of them as teaching emotions. They're here to teach us something about who we really are if we'd only listen. And all of it comes through the energy system.
Mhm.
So,
I have an energy worker. Oh my God. I don't even know how it works, but I go in there. I need almost a clearing on a regular basis because I absorb. I've got like all these crystals around me so that like the energy that I absorb when I listen to the very sad stories. But if I don't get that tune up, like if it's not 6 weeks, that's broken, Tracy, because it's just like that system gets balanced, your chakras get back in place.
yeah,
I didn't really realize that made a difference, but when you have them balanced, all of a sudden, like, I don't know why. It's like taking an Advil when you don't really know what. I feel better. I don't know why. I don't feel anything else, right? When you do
right.
the energy and you are clearing things that are historical, that are
Yeah,
set into your DNA,
yeah.
can start to separate that and you can let go of things like fear and anger. And she did recently obligation. That was a
Uh-huh.
really
Oh
big,
yeah. Oh, that's a huge one for narcissistic people raised by narcissistic parents or in those relationships because it's constant obligation.
absolutely. I have a narcissistic sister I'm no contact with, but I
Mm.
had the obligation to take care of her. I've been taking care of her for 20 years. And so the
Mm.
obligation was something that I didn't even see it. I was, oh, she's my sister. No one else is going to help her. I'll help her. She's mean
Yeah.
and witchy, but I was there and
Mm.
releasing that obligation allowed me to go
Yeah.
no contact. So the energetic system is integral to healing through this process.
Yeah. I would not have healed from those dozen illnesses had I not engaged that part of myself. And that's why I think it is the most important part,
Mhm,
because it's the healing really happens
mhm.
energetically. So, and
Yeah.
that's a part of the technique. It's an energetic
No,
technique, energy work for
nice.
sure.
Very cool. But how does food fit in here? Because we're talking about like a high level thing that some people might go, that's a little, I call it
Yeah,
bull.
a little woo woo.
But food is essential as well to our
Yes.
body system. How does it work
Yeah.
in this trauma situation?
Yeah. So food, I talked a little bit earlier, just a little bit about how they measured emotions in sound frequency waves. Food can be measured the same way. So there are foods that they know are denser and more difficult for you to process
Mhm.
than others. Food chemicals, of course, are a big one. Those are, your body's just like, it's foreign to the body. It doesn't know what to do with that. And so your body becomes toxic. So if you have toxic thinking and then you're putting toxic food into your body, you are actually working against yourself.
Mm.
So when you're doing your emotional release therapeutic work, energy work, all of that, the more high vibrational foods
Mhm.
that again have been measured, that you put into your body, the quicker everything moves, the more your intuitive nature opens up so that you can really hear and feel that inner guidance, feel what's right for you, build that self-trust. It just, food affects every single area of the body, every system,
Mhm.
because of the energy it contains. I mean, it's for your energy, right? You know?
It's your fuel, so it is energy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I think a lot of people, especially, survivors,
Yeah.
they soothe. We talked about the different ways they can soothe with food. And I'm classic. I mean, if there's not a box of chocolates in my refrigerator, it's not a good day because I eat wrong because that's how I was raised. We were
Mhm.
raised on Count Chocula and Fruit Loops, and that was our nutritional guideline, right? So 64 years, I'm still here, but I've had to learn how important the nutritional piece is because
Yeah.
I was raised on Twinkies and Yodels,
Yep.
and five of them at a time, just to say. But breaking those habits really transforms you and makes you be able to, tolerate things easier. You're more on edge if you're not eating right, if you're not taking care of your body and putting the right fuel into it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And some of the science behind it is they now know, have identified foods that are considered anxiogenic. So they cause anxiety, they cause depression. They
Wow.
know that chemically this is what's going on in the brain and in the body. And so when you start to learn what those foods are and you start eliminating it, I hear from people all the time. It's like, oh my God, I feel so much better. My head is so much more clear. I feel like the emotional stuff that we're doing together is, it's taking hold more quickly, because you still have to get through that what we think of as dense matter.
Mhm.
um, and you make yourself, your body more dense by putting foods in it that are full of food chemicals that are, and of course, in the US, we are in a big mess when it comes to farming practices and the different poisons, the herbicides, fungicides, all of those things they're putting on. I wanted to, you were talking about growing up on Twinkies, and Count Chocula and all that stuff. I had two completely opposites because my mother was a scientist and she was organic gardening in the 60s, 70s, 80s when the only people who were really doing that were hippies, basically. My mom was so far away from that because she was very logical, but she was also very spiritual. And she brought us up on organic gardening. We learned how to organic garden. We learned about organic food. We learned how how to prepare all of these fruits and vegetables and things. And then my dad was the total opposite. He was like, Twinkies, ho-hos, you know, go ahead, pour sugar on your Count Chocula. We were pouring extra sugar on our cereal, sweet tea from the South, because they're both from the South. So it was like I had these two opposite things. And then I also had you're a good, wonderful person and you're the most horrible person on earth. So the whole splitting thing that we go through being raised by narcissistic parents was split holistically in my world. And that's a big part of why I'm a big proponent for food, because I know that when I was sick and then I found that I had all these food allergies and I got these foods out of my system, within a week, I felt like a different person.
Wow.
My body, I was finally eliminating properly for the first time in probably my whole life.
Mhm.
Um, it was amazing happened. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to learn more about this. So I started there with nutrition and food and all of that. And then found mind body medicine, psychospiritual therapies, energy work, all of those things, combine them all. And it healed. It healed me.
Absolutely. And you were a chef too, right?
I was a chef for celebrities for about 14 years here in Hollywood.
Wow.
So private chef, and I did healing diets for specific health conditions and diets that would keep them healthy for camera. So everything was organic, gluten-free, dairy-free. And I was able to make it taste so good that people didn't feel like they were missing anything.
Wow.
So
I need you.
yes.
So to close this out today, tell me 3 things that our listeners can do right now to start to heal these wounds.
Yeah. First thing, take your healing into your own hands. You know, you have so much more power and capability and ability to help yourself heal than you can possibly be aware of. And as soon as you just take that healing into your own hands, everything changes for you. And with that, the second thing is really making a full on decision. Like I'm talking about, I am committed to my healing no matter what. And as soon as that, everything opens up. You find podcasts like this, you find books like the millions of books, literally, that Tracy has written, the books that I've written. You find everything that you need. Just the universe rushes towards you with so many solutions to help you heal.
Mhm.
Um, so taking your healing into your own hands, that number one thing, and number two is making that full on decision. And 3, get help.
Mhm.
Use that intuitive inner sense to find the practitioners that are going to help you. It took a team of healers to help me heal. And I continue on that process
Mhm.
as needed.
Mhm.
You become adept at the healing. So it's like these muscles that you're building. And so everything moves faster for you. And you cycle through the difficulties much more quickly when you keep at it, you know?
That's amazing. I love that it's making that commitment.
Yeah.
It's saying I'm going to do it even if I don't want to get out of bed, right? And it doesn't have to be Olympian. It just has to be one baby step at a time. And when that self-compassion comes in, you might be baby stepping and getting a little better, and then you might slip a little bit. Give
Yeah.
yourself the compassion to go, it's just a slip. I'm not going backwards. Because a lot of people are like, oh no, I'm all the way back. No, you just had it's a roller coaster. It's a little dip and it will be okay. So that self-compassion of,
Mhm.
you know what, I'll do better tomorrow. I didn't get my
Mhm.
healthy eating in. I ate a Twinkie or whatever it is.
Great.
Forgive
Yeah.
yourself and go, next, tomorrow's another day, but I'm committed to it, right?
Yeah.
Holding yourself accountable is a huge step that many people don't necessarily give themselves that grace to
Yeah.
be there for themselves.
Yeah. I love that you use the word grace because it's such a big part of the healing process and developing that kind of self-care and that kind of self-talk where you're just like, it's okay, hon,
Mhm. Yeah.
you're fine. We're gonna keep going, you know. Today's another day. So we're gonna feed ourselves
Absolutely.
the emotions that are powerful, empowering. We're gonna feed ourselves the food that's empowering. We're gonna feed our, just feeding yourself the thoughts that are empowering,
Mhm. Absolutely. And learning to change those negative thought patterns, I think is such an important part because we become our worst enemies. It's like your mom is in your ear
Yeah.
telling you that you're not good enough, or the narcissist is there omnipresent to sort of be in your head. It's kicking them out and taking back that control that you had the power all along, just like Dorothy in Little Red
Yeah.
Slippers, right? We don't know we had it because our parents took it away from us. And
Yeah.
it's our job to find it again. And then the lives will be so much better and you will not tolerate abuse again, right?
Yeah.
That's the bottom line is the stronger you get, these guys, these girls are just never going to really be able to stick. You're going to be like Teflon. They're going to slide off. You're going to be like, I know what that is. Thanks anyway. And
Yeah.
you'll feel more confident because you've conquered the wounds
Mhm.
of childhood and from narcissistic abuse. And You know what? Wounds make us vulnerable. If we have fear, a narcissist will play on it. If we have, this or that, they will use it against you. So healing these things attracts a better, higher vibrational person, which is important.
Yep. 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 In all walks of life, your friendships, your organizations,
Mhm.
your people that help you heal, you definitely will attract. And think about it this way too, because as you were talking, it was like, they're wounds. Wounds are meant to heal.
Mhm.
They're meant to be healed.
Mhm.
And you do have to participate in that process.
Yeah, they can be healed if you do the work to go, I got to work on this fear, anger, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't want to hold this anymore. That is self-love to go, I got to
Yeah.
fix this. How do I fix it? Read 5 books on anger, you will learn. Read 2 books on fear and you will learn. And it's not
Yes.
that it's like that obscure. There are books that teach us these things, and just get there, get with that therapist, like you said, someone who's going to be on your side and understand. Let's go for our last thing and tell everyone how they can find you. Where do they find you?
Yeah. So check me out on meghayworth.com. And you can find me on just about every social platform at Dr. Meg Hayworth. And it's HAWORTH. There's no Y in there. I do have a YouTube channel with hundreds of videos on there. I go more in depth into the holistic healing processes of having narcissistic parents and what it takes and all of that. So, and then I have iconic me coaching programs because I help wounded icons, adult children of narcissists become healed icons. And an icon in your own life is independent, confident, original, and naturally you, you know?
Love that.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you
Thank
so much.
you.
This has been such a great conversation. I know it's going to help a lot of people because health is so tied to this, and it's often the emotional stuff gets a little more talk time, but
Yeah.
the physical stuff we need to understand, especially for those who are experiencing
Yeah.
physical symptoms. Like, look at this, go read one of the books and go, oh my goodness, I see. Yes, every emotion in that little book makes sense. I get it. Now what? And makes the one to help you guys.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, my
Yeah.
dear. We will see you again soon.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Hope you found that helpful. Isn't she smart? I knew that you would learn things, and this is going to be something I share with clients every day because her knowledge and the information that we've just discussed is real. And it is something that you can work on, and you can fix these illnesses um, with different things. Yeah, I mean, it's a powerful thing to know it, but it's another thing to go, I don't have to be sick like this. It's amazing. So reach out to Meg, and I hope this helped, and I will see you again on the next episode.